Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Can I give everyone a second to connect to audio?
Good morning.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the vehicle procurement training. My name is Joey and I'll be helping out with any technical things. The cat is named?
Sorry, the cat wants to play.
Yeah. So if you have any issues with anything Zoom related, technology related, let me know. You can either speak out loud or put it in the chat. Up to you. If you need it, closed captions are available. Just let me know. And this training is being recorded. And yeah, that's it. Welcome. And I'll turn it over to Christine now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Christine Dennis. I know quite a few of you. I am the technical assistance provider on procurement for this award. So if you are planning to make a large purchase, you'll get to talk to me at some point. And today we're going to talk about procuring vehicles. Everything we're going to talk about is covered in 2 CFR 200. So if you want an actual citation for the regulation, let me know. I'll be glad to walk you through. How many of you are comfortable, are normally involved in the procurement side? Was anybody? Got nothing in chat.
So normally at the Tonkawa tribe is we will gather the, depending on the limit of the purchase,
Okay.
the individual rules for each grant, we will gather the quotes and submit them with a justification. They will go through procurement.
Okay.
Procurement will verify that they meet the OMB Super Circular 200, is it? And
No,
then
2 CFR 200, yes.
okay. There is another supporting one. They call it the Super Circular.
That's it.
Okay.
Same
So,
thing.
okay. And they verify all that and then it proceeds through.
Okay. What is your small purchase threshold for in your policy?
I believe the government limit went up to 10 grand. Is that
okay? So you're okay. Sorry, go on.
So I believe the government limit went up to 10 grand about a year or so ago. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So,
It's actually been a couple of years, but yeah.
COVID got me behind a year.
Ain't that the truth?
So I believe our limit for procurement is 10. If it involves large purchases, we usually elect, if it's around the 5 to 10 mark, we use depending on it how it looks, we will sometimes have our program directors gather 2 quotes just to be safe.
Okay.
But that is not in writing.
And that's fine, as long as, I mean, you're never wrong for getting quotes. You're just not required to have them if it's still less than 10,000. But yeah, you can absolutely do it. And I wouldn't put it in your policy simply because you're doing it on an as needed basis. The second you put it in your policy, you're required to do it every time. So don't lock yourself down. I think you're doing exactly what you should.
Okay, excellent.
So that hopefully helps. Yeah, we're going to talk today about basically what do we do if we need a vehicle? The small purchase threshold, the max you can use is 250,000. The micro purchase is 10,000. So pretty much any vehicle that you are going to buy is going to fall into what we call a small purchase. You have to document everything, okay? By regulation, you have to have at least 2 responsible vendors willing and able to compete for the procurement. You can say in your policy that you require 3 bids. That's fine, not going to argue with you. But by regulation, you have to have at least 2. Okay. What's responsive and responsible? Anybody know? What are we talking about? This is 2 CFR 200 318H. For those of you dying to read the regs later, which of course everybody wants to, right? What are we talking about when we say responsive and responsible? Responsive is exactly what it sounds like. They respond to the request for quote. They respond on time with the information that we have requested. Responsible means that they are willing and able to do what it is we want. They can deliver that vehicle. They can provide the services. Whatever the case is for what we're trying to purchase, they're ready to do it. As part of determining responsible, you have to check sam.gov. Okay. You can do additional checks. What are some ways you can verify a vendor is responsible? Y'all probably want to talk because otherwise you're going to have to listen to me for the next 2 hours, and nobody wants that. How do you verify the vendor is capable of doing a good job? Call people who've worked with them. Check local Better Business Bureau, see if they've got complaints. Again, the only thing you're required to do is check SAM. Is everybody familiar with sam.gov? Is there anybody who is not familiar with sam.gov? Anybody know what sam.gov is? Okay, sam.gov is System for Award Management. This is where you check to make sure vendors are registered. And just to be clear, they do not have to be registered. What you are looking for when you go there is this particular vendor debarred or suspended? Vendors who are suspended or debarred have done really bad things. It's not they had one bad day, okay? This is a pattern of behavior. You are not allowed to do business with them using grant money, okay? You are required to check that list. For the majority of funding agencies, they want to see a screen print that shows this vendor is not on there, okay? And we'll talk about that, going through that process and the documentation. The very first thing we need to do is a scope of work. Okay, every procurement starts with a scope of work. What's included? How did you do your scope of work? Talk to me about, Joshua, what kind of vehicle are you all purchasing? I've lost everybody. Okay, when you start putting together your scope of work, the first thing you need to consider is what is it we need it for? The most common use I'm seeing in this program is transporting people, either moving people from an unsafe household into a shelter or a new place. There's a lot of people who are transporting tribal members back and forth to court, to doctor's appointments, to various and sundry different activities. What you're looking for in this is, what do we need? How big does it need to be? Do we need a van? Do we need a passenger vehicle? Do we need a truck? You know, what's our ideal vehicle? How many people do we need to hold? Do we need space for luggage? Do we need a trailer hitch because we're going to take their personal belongings and relocate them? Do we need four-wheel drive? The answer to that is almost always. Handicap accessible. One of the things to consider, particularly in programs where you're working with elders, do we need space for wheelchairs and other medical equipment in the vehicle? Are you looking for a maintenance plan? I mean, are you planning to take the vehicle back and forth to the dealership? How are you going to address this? All of these things can be considered in your scope of work. Okay. You can go through GSA. You are encouraged to look at GSA. The one thing I will tell you is that GSA is not always the best deal. Sometimes it's really, really good. Sometimes it's really not. Okay, questions on that? Make sense? Okay, you have to determine a budget. How do you do that? What's the easiest way to determine your budget and figure out what your price estimate is? As you come into the procurement, you need to have developed a cost price analysis up front. You need to do that, number one, to determine, can we afford it? Number two, to check the bids you receive against your estimate. Is this reasonable? Is what they're charging us, what they want to charge us, reasonable for what we said we want? Okay. Easiest way to do that is get on the internet and build a vehicle. I would recommend you do not limit yourself to a particular brand, mostly because you cannot. So maybe you want to look at Toyota Highlander and Honda CRV and some of the others. And you can literally go on there and build a vehicle. Have any of you done that? I did. I did before I bought my last car. Makes it real simple because I could walk into the dealership and say, here's what your website says. So this is how much I expect to pay. As part of putting together your bid, you are required to tell them Indian preference applies. Okay. What does that mean? It means all other things being equal, we will choose the Indian-owned company. In addition the Indian-owned company has a price break involved. And we'll talk about how that works in a minute. Do you do any other types of preferences? Does anybody do tribal preference? Anybody do veteran preference? You need to do small minority women-owned business, okay? That's one of the 2 CFR 200 requirements. Tribal preference is optional. Almost every tribe I know does tribal preference. All that means is if we have one Indian preference vendor and one with both Indian and tribal preference is going to win. Number of bids required, real simple. At least 2 by statute. If your policy says more, you get more. Lease versus purchase. One of the requirements under 2 CFR 200 is to justify why we are going to either lease or purchase. What's the rationale for it? It's almost always purchased simply because the mileage, the cost on lease gets really expensive once you go over their mileage limit. And if you are working in a tribal environment, I can almost guarantee you're going to go over that limit. Okay, any questions? I'm going to start pulling some worksheets for you because we've basically set up the paperwork for you and tried to make this as simple as possible. That doesn't mean I'm going to be able to pull it, but we'll see what happens here. Going to pull the full set of paperwork here to kind of do a walkthrough, but we're going to start at the back. Okay. Can you see buy versus lease calculator?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks, Joey. You know how I am with this. Sometimes they get a little messy. Okay, buy versus lease, pretty simple. Vehicle information we've put in. We have a $35,000 vehicle. Interest rate on the lease, 6%. We did the calculations. And ultimately, it's cheaper for us to buy the vehicle because at the end of the period, we have an asset. We do not have any assets with a lease, just that simple. We give it back at the end. That may be the most reasonable thing to do depending on your circumstances, but you have to justify, okay? So let's build our car. Built, here we got the 2020 Express Passenger. For whatever reason, wanted rear wheel drive on here. We selected the pretty colors. We did add a cold climate package. Why would we do that? Depending on where you are, it may make sense for you to have an engine block heater. You know, if you're in North Dakota, this is going to make sense. If you're in Arizona, no, not so much. But we've gone online, we've built the passenger vehicle. Here's what we need. Here are the pieces we chose. We now know that our vehicle is going to be roughly $35,000, okay? Here's our scope of work. Passenger van to seat 6. We've made a decision. This is what we need. We need to transport participants to various services, counseling, court, medical exams, all of those things. After talking to the tribe's vehicle specialist, we decided the best fit for our needs is a 6-passenger van with cold weather package, since we consistently have temperatures below 0 throughout the winter. Wanted 4-wheel drive. After searching, we cannot find a 4-wheel drive. So we'll go with the basic model. Reasonable cost, $36,400. Okay, how did we get that? We added the parts down here. Standard vehicle, $36,400. Everybody good on that? Okay. Now we're gonna start calling. The nice thing about a small purchase is you do not have to advertise, okay? You have a group of people that you work with or have worked with or they have signed up to be contacted for these things. Pick up the phone. You've got a standard solicitation form. Everybody gets the exact same description of goods, services, scope of work. Why is it so important? Everybody has the exact same information because this procurement is going to come down to price. Who can give us the best price for what we need? Notice we do not state a specific manufacturer. We are not allowed to specify that because that is restrictive. We cannot restrict. Make sense? Sorta, kinda, mostly. So who did we contact? Well, we contacted Bubba. Bubba does not get Indian preference. We tell him about it. Bubba says he does not get it. Okay. Doesn't receive tribal, obviously. If you don't get Indian preference, you're certainly not getting tribal preference. Do they have any other preference? In this case, no. What's the price he gave us? $33,750. Okay, looks pretty good. There's one bid. Here's bid number 2. Same information. Talking to Jimmy's car joint. Talk to Lucy over there. They do get Indian preference. Do not get tribal preference. Do not have any other preference. And the bid is $35,000. Okay. We're required to have 3 bids. So here we go. We've got Mike. Mike doesn't get any preferences. Oh, thank you. My vendor price $34,800. Okay, whoever takes the bid needs to sign. Why do we want them to sign? Because we want to know who to talk to and prove that, yeah, somebody actually did this. Do we have our 3 bids? Are we good to go? Are we ready to make some decisions? We are. Okay, now let's get into how are we going to exercise the Indian preference part. Here's our quote acceptance. Mike, 34.8, Jimmy, 35, Bud has Indian preference, Bubba, 33,750. So first question we ask, is the low vendor, let's try this again. Is the low bidder a qualified Indian-owned company? The answer is yes. We're taking the low bid. We're done. If no one has Indian preference, we take the low bid. We're done. In this case, we have Indian preference. They happen to be the high bidder. So we take the lowest non-Indian vendor, which is Bubba, 33,750. According to our policy, at this price, they get a 10% X factor, which means what? How many of y'all have seen X factor in your policy or have X factor in your policy? Does anybody? It's a pretty common way to do it. And I like X factor simply because it's a sliding scale percentage. So instead of doing 10% across the board, the higher the procurement, the lower the percentage. Because if we're talking, you know, a $5 million contract, 10% gives you a really big amount of wiggle room, and it's not fair. It's not fair to everybody. So in this case, we're looking at 10%. What's 10% of the low bid? 33.75 plus the low bid gives us 37,125. What is that number? That is the maximum the Indian-owned company can bid and still get the contract. In this case, Jimmy's getting the bid. Is he the low bidder? Yes, he is, after preference applied. Here's what you need to remember when you're making these decisions. First of all, we're always looking for the lowest responsible bidder after preference applied. That's who gets the contract. If they cannot deliver, don't care how cheap they are, we're not doing business with it. If they don't have Indian preference, okay, we still might choose them. If nobody had preference here, Bubba gets contract. Is Mike Brown even in consideration? And in this case, no, he's not. He's not the low bidder and he doesn't have Indian preference. So we've pretty much tossed him out. Make sense? So here's our procurement checklist. We've done all of our work. We have our documentation, and now we are going to do our checklist for our file. We did a small purchase. We have attached our scope of work. We had 3 bids. We chose Jimmy. Why did we reject the others? Because they were either not the low bidder or didn't have Indian preference. Was the cost reasonable? What did we pay? What are we going to pay? We're going to pay 35. What was our estimate? $36,400. Is that reasonable? Is it okay for them to be below our estimate? And the answer is yes, as long as it's not strangely, inappropriately low. Does that make sense? Again, reasonable. Could they have been, a couple hundred over our budget, over our price guess? Yeah, would have been fine. We're going to do a purchase order. Why would we do a purchase order instead of a full contract? Do we need to do a full contract here? And the answer is no, we don't. We can get all of the information we need into a PO. Pretty simple. We check the debarred list. We hit print screen. We've included that. Obviously, I can't include it since I'm making up people. On vehicles only, we need to establish, should we lease it? Should we purchase it? What's our documentation? If we had done anything outside the norm, we would need to document it. What kind of things might we have done outside the norm? What if, let's go back to our bids. What if we chose Mike Brown? Could we do that? It depends on the circumstances. What kind of circumstances would have made Mike Brown the best choice? What if Bubba was not responsive and responsible? What if Jimmy was not responsive and responsible? In that case, it'd be Mike Brown. Does that make sense? Do you use? Josh is losing signal. That's not good. That's really not good. Do you all use any kind of procurement checklist for your files? Because you are required to document. That is 2 CFR 200 super circular requirement. Do you normally do that? Joey?
Yeah, so you sound good on my end. Do I sound good to you?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's probably on their end, their internet. Must be not all that good. I think a good choice for anyone who having internet issues is to leave and come back in. You could also reset your router if that's what your issue is, or maybe even just move closer to where your internet's coming from. Other than that, I don't think there's much we can do from our end.
Do you want to try that?
Yeah, if everyone wants to, who's having issues, like leave, take a couple minutes, leave, and then come back in. That has helped before, so maybe give that a try.
Yeah, I really don't. Okay, you got a digital system to document all of this, goes through your procurement, double checks documentation against adopted policy. Then you're going to be completely fine. Not everyone has a good system, which is one of the things that we're providing as far as technical assistance with this grant. If your system is good, then guess what? We're pretty close to done. You already know what you're doing. You've done this before. You have the checks and balances in place, and we're going to make a real short day for you. You will have to submit the documentation. Does it have to be these forms? No. As long as the required information is included, I would suggest you probably want to do this checklist, and you should have a blank one in your materials. Should have come out with the email. See if that helped on any. Dawn, is it any better? It is? Good. Okay, are you also at Tonkawa? Do I have a whole class at Tonkawa? Cool. Well, no wonder y'all are quiet. You're already doing it right. Again, one of the things I would strongly encourage is that you go ahead and when you submit for reimbursement, include this checklist so we can see you've done this. I don't care what your documentation looks like as long as it's there. It doesn't have to be exactly like this. This is more for people who don't have a solid system put together. How are you documenting Indian preference? Are you doing something similar to this acceptance form? How are you going to show that that's been done? I guess the other big question is, do you even have any vendors who would have it, may have Indian preference? You can submit digital, that works. Do you have any, I'm sitting here looking around, I'm guessing you probably buy out of Ponca or Enid. where are you going to buy? What kind of vehicle are you buying? And is it going to be purchased out of Ponca or Enid or Tulsa or OKC? I guess Stillwater too. Do you have any native vendors? Joshua, I just threw a whole bunch of questions at you. Sorry.
Christine, I know they're having some connectivity issues, so I'm just going to answer that for you real quick because I have their budget. They are
Sure.
purchasing 2 log cabin trailers to use as emergency
Yes.
shelter.
I remember that. Okay, they're not purchasing out of, they're not purchasing local, right?
I don't believe so, but I will let somebody from the tribe confirm that one for you.
I remember looking at that. Not for vehicles, at least to your knowledge. You've got quotes, you've got, okay. You have quotes. Is anybody native owned? Because they're probably not. You haven't located any. Huh. Thinking. Caitlin, do we have anybody else who's yeah, I bet you are. Caitlin, do we have anybody else who's doing something similar that might be able to provide some leads?
Not off the top of my head, but I can get in touch with the rest of the program the team here and figure out if anybody else has one.
I don't think I'm sitting here mentally cycling through who have I talked to about this, and I can't think of anybody who's doing it, but I would think there should be some options. I mean, there are at least some modular home options that are still going to come in under the small purchase threshold, which is what we're looking at here. I'm trying to think where else. Let me think about that a little bit. Sue and I go back a ways, and she definitely knows how to get in touch with me on any of this that you all need some guidance on. Because that's literally the only reason I'm here, is to walk you through any of these. And if that includes looking around for vendors, sure, why not? I'm trying to think. I do a lot of
Can
work
you
on
hear
the
me?
housing. Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was trying to pull up some information. I'm not in my office. I'm actually working from home.
Okay.
We did have a quote, I believe, that was sent in with whenever they applied for the grant. That was actually one of the vendors that we were going to consider. I did do a little digging and found another vendor with a similar things that we needed. So we do
Okay.
have our 2 quotes, but I do, and I would like someone to kind of maybe help me look at those to see if those are the things that we could use. I mean, that would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. What do we need to do here to make this easier for you?
just whatever you guys suggest. I mean, we could maybe I could email them, or I'm not sure if you had any suggestions.
You're working at home, so do you have them on your computer? Because I could give you a share screen and we could walk through if you have access. If you don't, that's fine. We'll set something up.
Yeah, I would definitely feel better setting something up, because I'm
Okay.
not sure. I know one was kind of sent to me in an older email, and
Tell me what's going to work for you. And we'll just set up a
Um,
Zoom so you can, when you're going to be where you have it pulled, we can go through. Anybody who wants to be part of it can be. 'Cause it sounds like you've got the federal guidelines nailed down. It's just a case of how do we make sure we have documented everything appropriately? Because,
Yeah,
and I'm
that's-
sure you can. Do you have my emails? Here, I'm gonna put it in chat.
okay.
Do you want to figure out your schedule and then just shoot me an email as to what's going to work?
Yes.
And then whoever you want, in, you may not need anybody. Again, you got your procedures in place. It sounds like it's just little assistance on the review side. Is that about it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's no problem. Um, yeah, Joey, does that work? Can we do that? Am I
Yeah, that sounds
promising
good.
stuff we can't do?
No, definitely. We can definitely make that work for sure. Once we have a date, I'll get the access information sent out to everyone.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
And
Thank
we
you.
can, yeah, we can go last minute too. If it's just a few of us, that's not any big deal. I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, is there anything else that you guys would have any questions on? Honestly, it sounds like, and I'm also the one who reviewed your audit. I didn't see any issues that stood out in there that we need to address. Sounds like your policy is pretty current for procurement. Everything's the 2 CFR 200 reference and not 887, correct? Yeah, sounds like it. The fact that you know gives me a great deal of confidence that your policy is fine. Yeah, I'm not really sure what more we need to address. Does anybody have anything else they want to cover? Because if not, I'm gonna let you get out of here real early. Okay, Dawn, why don't you go ahead, touch base, let's get this figured out. When is a good time? At least I think that was Dawn. I don't know.
Yes.
Okay,
I am. Next week is pretty much open.
okay. Um, Joey? I know we're doing a contract
Next
service
weekend looks
training.
pretty open for me as well.
Yeah, I had cancellation, so I'm around.
Should we do Monday?
Monday sounds good.
Should be fine.
Sure. What time works best?
I don't care.
Yeah, I'm open.
Okay, should we just do the same time on Monday?
Sure.
Works for me.
Noon Eastern time? All right. I'll get that scheduled and send out the info.
Awesome.
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, then that was easy, wasn't it? Sometimes it is. All right. Well, then guess what? You guys are free to go. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Otherwise, we'll talk Monday about 11.
That's
And
great, thank you.
all right. Thank you all. Appreciate you ducking in. Sorry that we had all the connection issues.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, the good news
You
is you
too.
get credit, you're done, you've done your stuff.